Hello, and this is Eric of Not BIOS. Today, I am doing a build of the Velka 5 case, as well as showing what not to do that can easily go wrong when building this case. Now let's get started. To start with assembly to this new case, the Velka 5, I downloaded the manual to my phone. It says to start with the motherboard backplate, and that is what we'll do. Make sure the holes on the plate line up to the holes on your motherboard, the ones that are sticking up. We now find the screws that you need in order to install, which I have right beside me. What I just did is made a mess. I recommend not throwing everything all over the table. Do as I say, don't do as I do. So this is going into that back plate. And these, I believe, are called risers or standoffs. They call them a standoff, according to the manual. Because the video card is going to be on the other side, and this gives some room here, by the way. Separation room for your cooler, your CPU cooler that goes on top of here. Now for the next step, it recommends I get that riser card. This right here, because the graphics card, video card, is going to be installed on the other side of this case. We install the slot into the slot. There's nothing complicated about it. The other side clearly does not go into the same looking slot. Make sure it's inserted all the way. Then there are two screws. Okay, let's go back and go around to the back side. So we got one partial in. Let's get the next. Put in the hole, line up your bottom area, and tighten up. I'd probably be mindful of doing it overly tight. Do it, I guess, hand tight as a recommendation. Past the PCI riser is the graphics card installation. Right here, you gotta flip your cable so it's facing back this way. So this has to fold. So let's do this. So you are going on this first time adventure with me. I've never assembled this case. I've actually never seen a system assembled in it myself. And of course I could see why most people wouldn't assemble this on a video, because it is very, very different. And now, this way we take up some of that slack, but this will also be more difficult to see what I'm doing. This time, it is going to be much higher than I want, much higher than expected, and this time we actually might have to use these long screws. Always be cautious. Always err on the side of caution so you don't ruin anything, and don't force extremely hard. This is my advice to you. I'm trying to do it hand tight, not extremely tight, because I don't want to crack this board here and then it's ruined and I need to buy another one of these. I believe $39. You might be able to buy one online for a little bit cheaper, but be careful getting too cheap, because when you get too cheap, you have the problem of it might not work properly. This video card is an EVGA ICX series 1070 video card. And as you can see, it is huge. It's so huge. Well, I'll have to go further back with the video camera in order to show you how big it is. And believe it or not, the case should be able to fit this. We are done adding the graphics card. Now we have to go on to the next part, which is building out of the case. Time to move the motherboard over and start assembling. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, be mindful of things that we install. If you have an M.2 drive and it has a heatsink, as you can see, it poses a gap between the motherboard versus the gap here, which is very tight against. So the issue here was my modification to this very board. I personally added a heatsink to my Samsung 960 EVO for the chipset. So I had to grind this down. Make sure if you do such a thing and you do the same sort of idea, after grinding down 4 rows of pins, I finally can get this flat. 4 rows of the heatsink. Went from being out like this to now mounting properly. Caution: I/O shield is sharp and will extend past the side of the case. Approach with care until rear cover is installed. What's an I/O shield? That is the plate that comes with your motherboard that allows you to insert your USBs and everything else in the side. Now, the I/O shield goes into this top part right here. Let's focus. And this is where things really go kind of to poop. Because I get to instructions, page 17, and it says front panel insulation. I was like, hey, wait a minute. I kind of didn't get there yet. So the case comes with the front panel installed. And right here, it's showing putting the front case on. When you start the manual, there's nothing about removing the front case. It says to make sure nothing's installed. It says the case is disassembled. But a lot of people don't realize that's assembled in your case when you receive it. And you have to disassemble that front face. Watch how much more difficult this is, being that I didn't disassemble that front face. The mounts here, this actually makes it more difficult than it normally should have been. I got it from the bottom, so let's try from the bottom again. Okay. It says to install the video card first, but I think this is a bad idea. This is so large and such a small case that the weight of this video card being mounted makes this very difficult. That makes things more difficult. You want to make it easy as possible, not difficult. So let's play around until we get this figured out. I/O shield's lining up. That's a good thing. So this is the way around it goes. You might want to slide your board in and then put your I/O shield in so you don't get it backwards like I managed to do. What you want to do is use one at a time, do the easiest one first. Because the more you get in, the better your alignment will be for your other screws. Again, it's small, this will be difficult. Make sure your screws lines up properly. This is a top cover. Take the top cover off and you shrink the size down And of course, normally install this, I'd take out the brackets, and this cooler would fit in this case with these brackets out. And with your AMD cover off, you actually should be good go for a 3600X 65 watt TDP. My 3800X is 105 watts TDP thermal dissipation power, I guess you want to call it, making it a little too much heat for that cooler to handle. And yes, I paid for all this equipment, the heatsink, everything myself. Nothing has been supplied to me. So get all the cables out of the way so we can focus on installing the power supply. When doing the power supply, line up your hole. Get it nice and tight. Okay, let's get this right. Nice and tight. Line up the hole and screw it in. Once you get a couple of these done, it makes life so much easier. If you want to, just put it a little bit loose so you can tighten it up after, so you know your alignment's all good. It tells me what connects where and what location on this particular power supply. 24 pin goes to the back bottom. My PCI Express goes on the top there. Serial ATA, that side right there. It's all written for those that have not built a computer. At least on this Corsair, not all power supplies are the same. Next thing I do is install our cables. I recommend only installing the cables you need. I definitely do not need these old style cables. These aren't used in modern systems, but maybe you have something old, I guess you'd call it legacy equipment. So this is out of the picture. These are serial ATA power connectors. If you have an SSD that's not M.2, this right here, that is important. This is your motherboard power. This goes to your case. I mean your power supply case. So we'll need that. This one tells me what it is. It's PCIe, PCI Express. That goes to the video card. And it has a second PCIe, but we only need one 8-pin in the case of my 1070. Some video cards have an 8-pin and a 3-pin or whatever the case may be. So I won't install that. I'm just installing what I need. The less cable clutter you have, the easier life is, and that's my power connector. I'm going to wire this up and I'll get back on video. I almost forgot to mention this cable right here. This cable right here is for my motherboard. You cannot forget that one. It's going to give you your power for your CPU, so that, your 24 pin, and for if you have a graphics card, your PCI Express serial ATA devices. That's your SSD, not M.2. Your actual data connection, power connection. So now I have my cables connected. I decided to connect the serial ATA power connection right here. And it's tucked underneath, so it's not my way, but I won't lose the cable. So there's no harm in connecting extra cables. It just makes more clutter. In the case of this power supply, the nice thing is I actually can mix up the PCI Express and CPU connection, but it says, at least on here, CPU. So the CPU goes to CPU power. The fun thing is keeping all your wires tidy. That's always a challenge. The smaller the case, the harder that is to do. You get tight against sides, so everything is good for airflow at least as much as possible. This cable here is also extremely important. To show you what this is, that is, by the way, the power switch connection. Your motherboard manual will also say what is what. Oh, I think we have it right here. I see a bunch of writing. Let's zoom up. So the nice thing about a cell phone is you can actually take pictures of small things. So power LED, PLED, power switch. Nope, that's power button. So this up here is these two pins right here in my particular case. This lines up with this, and these words line up there. Well, at least having the manual, what pin is what, they make life a heck of a lot easier for you than trying to guess. Another thing to keep in mind is a lot of boards actually have it in white writing, not this matching the board itself and being very difficult to read. These cables are going to start making a lot of clutter. PCI Express goes to the graphics card. The graphics card's on the other side, so slide your cable through to the other side. Head on to that side. What I want to do is get down the bottom and pull it through. Get your slack out of the way. Keep it tidy as possible. The smaller the case, the more difficult it is. And this is one of the smallest cases you get for gaming. So you'll often get in the way of yourself as you do your cables. But just relax. Get everything in spot. Into place. Make it nice and snug. If it's not all the way down, you're going to have problems that things can burn, short, not be stable running. So get your cables in its open area as much as possible. Keep airflow. Think always about airflow. Get this away from your clips so you can keep focused on what's important. Keep it tidy. I actually don't need to use, oh, this one I want to use. That's my USB. Again, it's covered, and again, I have to uncover them. So, again, the fun thing about a small case build is everything is bearing everything. I got my USB cable installed. Normally I was going to overlap it over top, but it's easier to put the power supply cable over top to get it snug like a bug in a rug. This cable here, HD audio, connects to the motherboard. It's so you can have your audio ports on. I'm not connecting it yet because I'm not sure if I want to connect it at all, but this is up to you for install. If you want to use your ports back here with your USB. These USB ports are connected via that cable I connected right here. And that is definitely useful in this case because this particular case, when it's standing up, everything has come out of the top. So it's more tidy connecting the USBs on the back than it is on the top. But I got some items to mod this to make it look tidier once it's done. And some of you that seen my other videos maybe say, hey Eric, how about the Wraith Prism cooler that came with your 3800X? Yes, this would fit nicely in this case, but it will also stick past the case by a decent amount, as well as any other cooler, but this is a part of having the cooler you want and still have your CPU power. You have to go with a bigger cooler. Unless you go with something that's had 65 watt TDP, which I don't want to because I do video editing. Now, what I can do to make it a little bit smaller, take off the AMD cooler and put a Noctua fan. That's an option. And I did manage to mount a Noctua fan using some screws. I went 2 fins in on each screw at least. But it allows you a smaller cooler with a quieter fan. If you'd like more information on how to do this mod, please look at my video that has a thumbnail, CPU Cooler Review. Connect the fan to the CPU cooler header, which is right, in my case, right beside my RAM sticks, and it's hard to access. If you do that first, life will be easier. I'd recommend having the clip on this side, because this side you'll do last to take off, but you'll install it first. And don't be shy of getting yourself some light. Once it's recessed inside, your life will be a lot easier. So it definitely is possible to install an SSD drive, in this case beside a SFX power supply. Not the FXL, which means long, because you can see this is tight as heck. And I've been trying to get this second screw in right here for some time. So I'm hoping to get it in so it's tight. I recommend getting a miniature ITX type graphics card and installing on the other side, because that, my friend, would be way easier to install with the bracket, less cable clutter, make your life simple. Trust me on that one. So after a lot of struggling, I found installing with the cables down here to be a better option, because the screws were coming through the holes. So this way, it's right at the top, so it leaves no room for the screws to come through the holes. It was very difficult fighting with all this cable spew in back here. The more you have connected, the harder it'll be to install a drive on this side. On the other side, if you had no graphics card, you had an APU, a CPU with graphics built in, guess what? It'd be easy as heck. With a miniature graphics card, easy as heck on the other side. Just use the drive tray. And if you have a small graphics card, you can actually fit a full-size hard drive even. That's crazy. But pretty awesome. So screws are inserted. And I don't have extremely snug, just hand tight like with my screwdriver. So there's some force, but not a whole lot. And the power supply keeps this quite sturdy as well against it. So that's a success. I do have a 90-degree angled connection option, but I chose not to use that cable, which is fine, but it would have been a better option than using the cable I used. Also, having a flexible cable on the power supply like this, the soft stringy type stuff, is a lot better than some of the ribbon cable that is really stiff with other power supplies. The nice thing about assembling in a case after is once it's done, it's generally done until you change some components. So it is almost touching. Very, very close. So the case comes together with screws here, here, and you add a bracket that comes with it, and put 2 screws through. Put the side case on first, and then the back bracket. And a screw here, and down here. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. I'll be doing a mod guide and a review in a later coming video. I'm still waiting on a few parts. Look forward to that next week. Have yourselves a wonderful day.